I've noticed that at least in the past couple years, specifically like with putting up the ISS and going through like the data logs of NASA, it's not only a lot of money, it's in the billions of dollars that it takes to actually build these things together, but everything here is on Earth. It's them
Mhm.
putting it up into a rocket and then building it that takes more than 20 to 50 years. And then that's only like half of it. It's not the entirety of it built. But I was like, okay, there has to be some type of easier way to go about this. What if we just build everything in space?
Hi, I'm Emma Zareen, your host and a 16-year-old engineering student, policy enthusiast, and hopeful future STEM school survivor. Welcome to She Persists. Before we dive in, I just want to take a second to say how grateful I am for each of you. Every listen and every bit of support genuinely means the world to me. When I started She Persists, it started as a little dream to share real stories of young girls in STEM who are challenging norms, finding their place, and inspiring change. Seeing that idea come to life has been so rewarding, and honestly, it's just the beginning. If you've been enjoying these conversations, I'd love for you to be a part of our community by following this podcast. It's one of the best ways to help us grow, share even more incredible stories, and connect with a wider audience. And I hope the conversation doesn't end here. I hope you carry these stories with you and let them be a constant reminder that your voice truly makes a difference. Today's episode features Victoria Mascorro, a mechanical engineering student at the University of Texas at El Paso and the founder and CEO of Space-CRYO, a research-driven initiative focused on advancing cryogenic materials and space-based manufacturing. In this conversation, we talk about how her Space-CRYO project began as a science fair research on eutectic alloys in microgravity, eventually becoming a startup focused on the future of materials manufacturing in space. We also discuss her experience publishing research, being a NASA SEAS intern, and contributing to aerospace projects along the way. I'm extremely excited for you all to hear this conversation. So with that, let's get into it. Here's Victoria Mascorro. Welcome to the She Persists podcast. I am so excited to talk to you, Victoria, and I can't wait to hear more about your journey and everything behind it.
I'm very excited to be talking about it.
I'm going to get started with the first question. What first inspired you to pursue STEM and specifically mechanical engineering?
So I guess I got pretty lucky being so young and interested in cars and just specifically the automotive world that as soon as I was like maybe 12 or 13, I decided that I wanted to like build vehicles and actually do something like that. Later on in life, after basically, I think, junior, senior year of high school, I was like, you know what? I want to design Ferraris. So kind of like being introduced that at a very young age, just watching a lot of like, I guess, TV show, reading a lot of books on that really it kind of ignited it. And then over the years, of course, getting internships like at NASA, it really just fueled it more.
It's amazing. So it's really great to hear that you've had that passion for STEM for so long. And it's great that you were able to find ways to pursue that. I guess, kind of tying into that, what are some things that you did in high school to explore this interest in mechanical engineering?
So I know at least I was also, again, pretty lucky going to high school. I did the early college route. So we were tied to EPCC, our local community college. So we got a lot more. So we not only got to choose specifically what degree we wanted to start off, so mechanical engineering, I already was able to get into really high curriculum courses. Understanding that was really helpful, just developing at an academic level, but really also looking at easily the robotics team that we had at our high school was really well done. We got very far. We went all the way up to internationals one time and kind of doing that as well. But I think the biggest thing that inspired or got me to do more and more STEM was science fair. I did it all the way since sophomore year, since freshman year was COVID year for me. So doing that back to back and really just having that like opportunity to share a project that I was very passionate about and to then take it all the way up to like ISEF, it was really amazing. It was fun. The teachers were amazing. The mentors that I had, even with NASA, it really just got that really going at least.
That's awesome. You mentioned that you did the science fair. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of what you pursued and your project and what that experience was like for you?
Yes, of course. My sophomore and junior year, I did do a robotic arm in testing just how efficient it could be in not only in like the workforce, but as well as like surgical components. So I built that one. I got pretty far with that one state level. It was really fun just getting to like 3D print something and actually work with like servo motors and a breadboard. So that was really fun. But then it was senior year that I really got to take off and do Space-CRYO. That was the first initial design for it in exploring the title for it was exploring eutectic alloys and their solidification process through microgravity. So just like a super fancy scientific name for freezing metals in space. So of course, though, like funding wise, it was a bit extreme
Yeah.
young age. I can only imagine how now going back and seeing like how much more I could have developed it. But working on like simulations and a lot of math calculations really got it far to where then it was able to be not only blue ribbon at state, but then at ISEF being able to present with like all these other kids and their projects and getting a really good atmosphere of like there's a lot of young kids that are wanting to explore these areas and I'm glad to like be a part of that. So that senior year was very pivotal for me to, like, be able to develop all the way.
Yeah, I think that's so special, especially as a high schooler and something like the science fair, being able to just surround yourself with so many people who have these diverse but very similar passions as you. I think that's really amazing that you got to explore that. Tying into that, you mentioned a few times your internship with NASA. So can you tell us a little bit more about that experience and how that kind of came about?
So, yes, the NASA SEAS Atmospheric and Space Research Internship. I honestly applied to it, like, on a whim. I did not think I was gonna get in. I thought, like, for sure, not only my application or even, like, my video was gonna be, like, made because I had already applied to so many, so I was like, "You know what? I'll give it a shot. I'll see what I can do." And then getting the email back was, like, crazy, of course, like, that initial, like, "Oh my god, I actually got in." Being able to then go to 2 weeks in Austin and actually spend time not only at the campus, but actually work at the Pickle Research Facility and gather with mentors and stuff was amazing. I got to work with London on the high altitude and ballooning research, and there it was amazing. Not only did we have, like, Nick Pugh and Bob Twiggs, Melissa and Laura, all of them helping us and, like, develop this high altitude ballooning, but really, like, forming it was our own family in our own way.
Yeah.
Working with all the other girls was amazing. Getting to, like, not only share this passion for science, but it being an entire group of girls was, like, amazing to see because I had never been a part of something like that, and getting to spend those 2 weeks was really, really quick, but it was one of the highlighted moments that I've had so far, at least.
Yeah, Miss Melissa told our team this year a lot about, the team she had with you guys, because she mentioned that you guys were a group of 10 girls, and she had never had a group like that before, so that was really amazing to hear, and she told us a lot about your project and the things you guys have done. But kind of going off of that, what was your guys' project that year, and what was kind of your goal?
So, our main goal was actually, from what I was able to remember, is we were trying to develop specifically looking at the heat that was going on at that time in Austin. Temperatures were going up, I believe, in 111, 112. So,
Wow.
really understanding like the different atmospheric changes that would happen to not only the plants, but as well as living life there. So, we did get a lot of data back from that. It proved that there are significant changes that are going to come within the next couple years of not only heat waves but as well as how it can then detect or change at least the way we look at ergonomical things. So plant life wanting to have more of that at least for shade covering and kind of developing that all the way to then get to AGU publication. That was mostly part of it. There were a lot of, I will say, struggles because I think two when we tested it I think 3 times. 2 of those times, we lost the balloon, and we're not able to retrieve it again, so most of that data was lost, but using the little cube satellites that Twigs gave us kinda just to get that data back as well was really helpful.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I've obviously, I know a lot about Cs, but just hearing from other students and people who have been part of the experience is really cool to see everyone who's kind of been through a similar path and just hear from that. So, how did you go about applying for this internship and how did you find out about it?
So, I remember finding out about it through I think it was my chemistry teacher. She had told me about it just kinda, like I was asking her, "Do you know anything I could be applying to, looking at?" And really just kinda going on Google and looking for, like, space, specifically looking for, like, space internships, and that one did come up, and I was like, "You know what? I've heard a lot of good things about it from, like, looking at the videos and seeing other kids that have gone to it," and I was like, "You know what? I'll try." It's not a rigorous application process, so I initially thought I had a good chance of getting in, so with that, yeah, going to applying to, like, resumes, getting at least some of my resume stuff together, just all the clubs, the science fair that I did, all of that together, and then getting, I believe it was 2 initial cover letters or asking other people to write a cover letter for you. Of course, my chemistry teacher and one of my other teachers, I believe I did get, and kind of asking them, hey, can you just like talk good about me for a couple of things? I really want to get into this. And them being like, you know what? Yes, like they knew how much, of course, all of us work so hard on this. So I
Yeah.
stand a good chance of getting into that. And then, yeah, giving it, honestly, I feel like the video is what maybe sold them because I decided, I'm just not going to go off of a script. I'll just talk about how much I love space and how this can really help me break into that. And yeah, no, then a couple months later, getting that email and being
Yeah.
like, oh my God, nice. I got in. Like, that was amazing. So.
Yeah, that feeling of getting in and seeing that letter is always, like, one of the best feelings ever. So you mentioned that you were interested in automotive engineering and mechanical engineering in that aspect, but were you also interested in space from a young age, or was that kind of a passion that developed along the way?
So it is a passion that did develop over the years, honestly. I like to call it, it's just my little hobby that I like to keep myself because I know trying to break into the automotive world, at least, is still pretty difficult. There aren't as many like opportunities or
Mhm.
internships that you can get into. A lot of them require you to already have like a bachelor's degree or have some type of like certification to break into them. So, kind of keeping my motives in education focused on automotive, on what I want to do for the future, my job at least, but keeping myself in this hobby interest of like space and exploration through different types of cosmos and universes is kind of what's been developing. And I've said to myself, at least since Space-CRYO has taken place, that if it ever does changes, if this grows into something more, I probably will follow it through. Have my degree and everything, but I'll still then probably change to more aerospace than that. So.
Amazing. So I think that's a really good segue into talking about space cryo. So can you tell me a little bit more about your company and what you guys do and what inspired you to start it?
So yes, space cryo. Honestly, yeah. What first, of course, got me to start this was the science fair project. I had really developed it. I had put a lot of time and research and simulations into this that as soon as I got or was able to transfer fully to UTEP, I was like, you know what? I really want to get this developed more. I actually want to see a prototype built. So I reached out to, I believe, a couple like pitch competitions here in El Paso, just looking at people like, hey, I want to pitch my idea. I can send you my pitch deck and all of this stuff that then I was able to finally get into a ventures pitch competition here in El Paso. So I did the collegiate level. I pitched twice and was actually first time doing this, not basically really developing a not so good pitch deck and talking about it that I actually won the collegiate level back last year, 2024.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. With $5,000. So I was like, "Oh my god, this is like insane." Like I really was going in there like not knowing anything, kind of just being like, "Okay, I'll try my best. Let's see how that goes." And winning and then getting all that money, I was like, "Oh my god, this is really good." And that's where then all of like the initial networking with people, talking to people from UTEP, NMSU, other startups, really being interested in this because it was a different take on what we're trying to do for space. So, kind of, I guess, deviating from that, explaining what space cryo is. Space cryo is basically trying to, in simple terms, 3D print metals in space. Because I've noticed that at least in the past couple years, specifically like with putting up the ISS and going through like the data logs of NASA, it's not only a lot of money, it's in the billions of dollars that it takes to actually build these things together, but everything here is on Earth. It's them
Mhm.
putting it up into a rocket and then building it. That takes more than 20 to 50 years. And then that's only like half of it. It's not the entirety of it built. But I was like, okay, there has to be some type of easier way to go about this. What if we just build everything in space? How hard could it be? So I took a more initial, smaller approach at it, being like, okay, how specifically can we build in space? We have different types of castings here. We have robot lines, manufacturing lines, and all that stuff. And I thought, well, 3D printing is probably the easiest route because you could 3D print anything. And if you do it in the form of cold working specifically, it actually shrinks. It doesn't shrink the metal, it keeps it in the same form than rather than heating it since it expands over time.
Mhm.
And looking at specifically metals just because of the concentration of not only the radiation, but as well as the durability of it in a extraterrestrial type of environment, we need to focus on that. PLA plastics aren't suitable for that. So
Right.
kind of developing that year by year, and then now working with, NMSU, I did decide to talk to NMSU and reach out to them, and was then now, at the moment, developing a prototype with the capstone project, working with seniors that are also graduating and getting them to not only work on a prototype, but as well as learn as much as I've developed Space-CRYO to now, build it. So, kinda something like that.
It's amazing, and that's a really interesting question and a really nice take that you took on that project because I know they're doing a lot of work right now with 3D printing in space and finding ways to optimize that. So I think that's a really interesting idea and a really great initiative that you're taking. And also with, it takes so much time and effort and money to send stuff into space constantly from Earth. Have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur or pitch an idea? Or did you ever see yourself kind of in this place that you're in now, or did it kind of just happen?
Honestly, no, I did not believe that this was the route I was gonna take. I really thought that I was just gonna go through college and get a couple internships there, work on robots with the team. Nothing like this I really imagined for myself, and in a good way, I'm glad it happened. Like, there are a lot of people out there that are willing to help, at least for me. It was just reaching out, networking, saying like, "Hey, I have this idea. I really wanna go through with it. Can you help me?" And a lot of people putting me through I-Corps programs for NSF funding, as well as just CEO pathways for learning how a business operates and works, looking at like market validation, IPs, all of that stuff to develop a business just because I had always focused on the scientific side. Developing a business side now really helps me balance it all. So being able to focus and say, hey, I can create this, but I can now also pitch this and bring in money with that. So yeah, it took a turn, but it's a good thing to now have and to develop at least.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important skill that you mentioned, networking. That's, I would say, inarguably the most important skill you can have because you really never know where opportunities will come from or who you can collaborate with and work together with. So I think that's really great that you were able to reach out to so many people and form this amazing company now. So, what's been your biggest challenge in leading this STEM startup?
I would say the biggest challenge, well, one at least, is always kind of like finding money and finding funding for something like this. It is a bit of a challenge because you can go super extreme. You can like make an entire CubeSat satellite that shoots up into space, but then you got to like go back to the fundamentals and be like, okay, well, we need to make sure that this actually operates in not a theoretical way, but prototyping, making sure that the networks, all going down to like the really fundamental things of how satellites are built, making sure that that's the initial approach that we want to take. So money, at least like breaking it down, making sure that like, okay, we're going to do this, but we need to make sure that we're not going overboard with how much we're spending or with the little money that we may have. But I will say also time has been also the biggest one just because 'cause I've been super anxious now for the last couple years to actually just build it already,
Mm.
that I would say that that's my challenge, at least time, just it takes a lot to get this thing up and running and to then be able to say, "Oh, well, I've come so far from just an initial little science fair project to now a full-fledged company in working on something like this." It has taken time, so I would say those 2 at least.
Yeah, and I think that's another really amazing thing that you just pointed out, and something that's so valuable about the science fair is that, you could start this as a high school project and then end up taking it into something real and further and just, showing it to the real world. And I think
Mhm.
that's so cool. And also you mentioned time. I think a really big thing, especially coming from like an engineering perspective, is that, you form this idea and you really just want to get to building it and just seeing the end result, and then sometimes it's important to take that step back and realize there's so many steps in between. But yeah. Yeah. So another question, I guess, kind of similar to the time thing. How do you balance being a CEO of this company and a student as well?
I I won't put it lightly, it is very difficult, um, and at least me being in a different, light of things, I'm already technically a senior in college, about to already get my degree and everything, and still working on a company like this. The classes are very difficult, having to pay attention a lot of time on doing exams, projects, and all that stuff, but then making sure that, like, I have time for Space-CRYO and getting those students to be on top of things, making sure that I'm giving them the right information, shooting emails, all that stuff is very difficult. But I always find, at least in my way of organizing things, is just pointing out what is the most difficult thing I have at the moment and getting that one out of the way first, because that will bite me back if I don't take action in that phase. So I've been slumping with exams this past couple week. So prioritizing that over space cryo just so that I can, ace them and make sure that I'm doing really well in those classes. And then coming back to space cryo over the weekend, I'll work on a couple draft emails, working on documents I need to send to students. So really prioritizing the things that are most critical at the moment, I would say. It's for sure, I will say it never gets any easier, especially when then I decide to go and get a job. And then on top of that, make sure I still have a social life and
Yeah.
not be completely isolated. Cause I will say, yes, no, still getting out and plugging away from everything is really good, because you can get so into it and then you get
Hmm.
really unmotivated and then you don't want to do it anymore. Plugging yourself away from that has also been really helpful. So just getting away, not thinking about it for a long time and then going back and being like refreshed and all that stuff has been very my type of way of working on things.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Time management is hard, for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's important to be able to kind of block that time out for everything and make sure that you're kind of focused on everything, but also you still have time for yourself. So I think that's a really good point. So as Space Cryo is growing and succeeding, what change do you hope it can bring to the aerospace and space-based manufacturing industry?
So the big thing I would have to say is hopefully we can now start exploring the rest of our universe. Really, hopefully this is able to now only not cut cost and time and the amount of effort we put things into worrying about the small things, but now really looking at what our universe has to hold, because I know Mars and the moon have always been back on our radar, with NASA wanting to go back at least soon. Focusing on those different things, because we never know exactly what's gonna be on those planets or with the different asteroids and comets that come in and out of our area. Really focusing on that, because I mean, we can find so many solutions, I believe, that can help us here back on Earth and just advance us even more
Yeah.
in a technological way, that this is just yeah, this is really getting something super, super hard right now that we look at it out of the way and then focusing beyond our cosmos at least.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And something you just mentioned, that I think
Mhm.
is a really big part of space is that sometimes we look at space and Earth as two very isolated things. But I think it's so important to remember that a lot of the space and technological advancements we're making in space are able to help us advance on Earth as well and keep improving technology on Earth and just give us more knowledge on what's out there, because space is huge and vast and there's just so much we don't know. And we know like a tiny little portion of it. I think the initiative you're taking is really amazing in helping us speed up this process too, because not just money and cost and transportation, but also building things in space could really help with the time that it takes to build those components and use them. Kind of going off of that, we've talked a lot about what you've done in the past and what you're doing right now. Kind of looking into the future a little bit, where do you see yourself 5 or 10 years from now?
So actually, since I will be graduating spring of 26. Well, next semester at least. I do actually plan to leave the US and go finish up my master's degree in Italy. Kinda, yeah, looking at that as my future and hopefully developing a more now manufacturing and automotive side with getting internships closer to Ferrari, to Italy, and all of that stuff is what I hope to see. And hopefully, either if I continue Space Cryo, work with some European nationals and actually trying to get it developed, or then focusing now on becoming a part of Ferrari and actually becoming one of the automotive designers, making that
Amazing.
happen. So, yeah, it's
Wow.
really ambitious and it's yeah.
Yeah, so you just spoke about your dream of working at Ferrari. Um, do you see, like, aerospace tying in anywhere in that, or do you think you'll keep, those 2 kind of separate, automotive and aerospace?
It would be amazing because I always think Back to the Future if we could have flying cars, but I know that that is a different passion project that I probably need to calm myself down on and not think crazy on. But maybe I do see them still being pretty separate just because they're so
Yeah,
different in the engineering world and science world that, yeah, they'll probably be separate for a while. But who knows if we're able to develop with what we find in space that can help energy fuel systems within
yeah.
a car. I mean, I will for sure tie that in. They will be 2 orbiting planets, I would say, for me. So getting those together would be pretty amazing.
Awesome. And that's so cool to hear that you're trying to take Space Cryo into like an international
Mm.
initiative. So that's amazing. And I guess last question about your company. If you could collaborate your startup with any organization tomorrow, who would you choose and why?
Ooh, I would say I have to do, of course, the newer startup founders. So maybe the companies I've always like looked to that are developing things in space right now, if it's either medicine or other types of PLAs, I'd have to say probably like Made in Space. They're like the 2 leading companies that are making things in space that are actually showing real data up there. Being able to collaborate with them and be like, hey, I have this crazy idea, I wanna collab with you guys, you have so much already up there, like, I wanna be able to do all of that together.
So, out of everything that you've done so far, science fairs, your NASA internship, and publishing at AGU, and then also starting your startup with Space Cryo, what accomplishment has made you the most proud so far?
Oh god, to put all of those up
Hard question.
together. I know,
Yeah.
that is oof. I mean, I guess I would have to say probably Space Cryo has been, I mean, I never really thought it would have gone this far, and I'm super happy to have accomplished this so much in such little time, really. So, kind of doing all of that and getting together and hopefully seeing what it has for the future, I would have to say, yeah, Space Crawl has been my biggest accomplishment for sure.
That's amazing, and seeing it grow with you from a science fair project to where it is now, and then
Yes.
seeing where it's gonna go from now, that's awesome.
Mhm.
And how do you stay motivated with your work and just maintaining everything that you have going on in STEM and college and just everything that you're doing?
So I will say I love everything that I'm doing. It's really, yeah, it gets really frustrating, really stressful, and I just wanna stop it and just be like, "Okay, this is too much." Like, it does get really overwhelming, but in the end, I really love everything that I'm doing. I love that it's there are these little problems here that I'm trying to figure out. It helps that I'm basically becoming what an engineer is, formulating these small problems and then finding bigger solutions into that. So, I will say, yeah, love what you do, even if it's, yeah, if it's this small little class. I will say I mean, already taking all these college courses and everything, having to take, like, the small math, science, so I will say I did not like differential equations. That was absolutely bad and not fun, but knowing that that's just one thing in the way of these bigger things with all the other mech courses that I have is something to look forward to, and just, yeah, having fun with it is crazy, and surrounding yourself with people that are kind of in the same boat as you, either if they're going off and getting internships or they're developing their own passion project. Really getting surrounded by those types of people gets you to be motivated. You kind of like lean off of each other if you're
Yeah.
struggling, you help each other. So having those people around you helps a lot.
Yeah, and what you mentioned about just having fun with what you're doing, I think sometimes it's so easy to just lose touch and be like, "Oh, I'm doing this, this, and this." But I think really honing in and realizing, "Oh, I love what I'm doing and I'm doing this because I truly enjoy it." That's so important and that's a really big piece of motivation. So, yeah, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would you say to her and why?
Oof. I would honestly say for sure try and live try and live in that moment as much as you possibly can because it really blinked for me on how fast everything went. And yes, don't get me wrong, I did have fun and all that time, but yeah, remembering that like you're in that moment and you're still so young and developing and all that stuff. Yeah, don't take advantage of that. Really be happy at what you're doing in that moment because sooner or later you're already going to be done with school and you'll already be working a job and all that stuff. Those times don't come around again, and really focusing on not only the people that are around you but what you love doing at that moment is one of the bigger things I would want to say.
I think that's a really good note to end it off on. So, thank you so much for being here with us today, Victoria. You've seriously done amazing things, and it's just been really inspiring to hear how it all came together. From your science fair project to what you were doing in high school, and now you're tying it into what you're doing now and, plans for your future. But thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I know you have so many bigger things ahead, and I can't wait to see where Space-CRYO goes one day.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was very fun to do.
It was an amazing conversation. Thank you. Once again, I'm your host, Emma Zareen, and thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the She Persists podcast.